guys. Welcome back to the Left of Straight Show Interviews, the premier podcast that shares the stories of our amazing LGBTQ community and, of course, fantastic straight allies, all from entertainment, foodies, books, music, and advocacy. I'm your host, as always, Scott Fullerton, and let's start talking. All right, everyone, welcome back to Left of Straight Show Interview, my friends. Today we are going a little off topic than our more lighthearted entertainment interviews because I have a very special guest in studio with me. Ron Hunter is here. Ron is the author of the powerful and deeply moving memoir, Angel Finally Found His Wings, a true story of finding trust, hope, faith, and the power of love. This is not just words, but it's a testament to survival, resilience, and hope. Ron's story is overcoming unimaginable challenges, having been forced into sex trafficking as a child, navigating life on the streets, trying to take care of his mother. I mean, his journey from those dark days becoming a voice for others who face similar hardships is nothing short of inspiring. I'm honored to have Ron with us today and to share more about his experience and the impact of his book. So let's get right into it. Ron, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Scott. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Angel Finally Found His Wings. I'm excited.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. A truly inspiring book. I mean, it goes with some dark parts of your life, obviously, that you kind of had to work through, but it comes out very inspiring. And just that you're able to kind of change that around is going to be such a testament to so many people that think that there's nowhere to go, but there's always some place to go if you work hard and kind of keep that attitude, right?
Yet keep the faith, the hope, and let the trust be there. No, don't turn away, from it. So yes, it will. And that's what I hope to achieve with the publishing of Angel Finally Found His Wings, is that people can see that in spite of all that happens in your life, you can have an amazing life lived. And you can find all the things that you want to find in it, and not be tarnished by your traumas from the past. And that you're not a victim. That's the thing. You were victimized. You're not a victim. You survive, and then you go further and you live life happily.
Well said. Important distinction. I'm glad you said that. Well, let's start a little bit at the beginning here. Talk a little bit about your backstory before all this started to happen, though. Talk about where you grew up and what kind of kid were you up until all this started really going on, up to like age 12. What was it like?
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, Canarsie to be exact, in the projects. And I'm the youngest, the baby, as we say in my family, still to this day, and I'm going to be 65. But the baby of 22 brothers and sisters, believe it or not. Unfortunately, the oldest living one of the remaining 5 of us just passed. She was 88 at the time when she passed, but she was the oldest living at this time. So now it's down to the 4 of us. Let's see. I was a horrible kid. No, I'm kidding. I was a good kid, I guess. Everybody seemed to love me. I seemed to be everybody's, from what I'm told and the stories I was told, I was everybody's baby in the projects. We have courts. When you're living in the projects in Canarsie, where we had courts. So our court, I was the baby of the child of the court. Everybody was my parent, There was no getting away from Mrs. Jenkins and Mrs. Williams, So it was good. What else? Let's see. My mom.
What was Brooklyn like back? So this was like mid 60s or whatever, late 60s. Talk about Brooklyn, New York. What was that like for a young kid? Just no matter what happened, what was it like to kind of be in that time in that area?
I loved it. I loved Canarsie. Canarsie was a great place to grow up. We had a lot of things to do. Some of them we had to create on our own with what we had available. We were all in the same boat. We were poor. We lived in subsidized projects. We were all kinds of cultures, Black, white, Spanish, Jewish, And we had the one thing in common: we were all poor and we were all struggling evenly across the board. And the one thing I did love about it was we were all a kind of family within our court. We all knew who was who, and we looked out for each other. It was just a wonderful place for me.
A true melting pot.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really was.
I love that. We're going to get into your LGBTQ journey a little later on in this, but talk to me. When did you first kind of start coming out to yourself, and where do you think you started to find your LGBTQ tribe eventually?
Okay. My first experiences was when I was a young boy. I knew early on that there was something different. I didn't know what it's called or what it was, but I just knew there was something different, the way I felt around the boys. And I was always uh, more mature than the boys my age, the other kids my age. So I was always with the older boys. So, of course, I'm looking up to them and feeling welcomed by them, feeling special because they looked after me and always included me in. And it was in there that I began to feel these different feelings. We had some girls that were in there, and of course, we always have the little, oh, his first girlfriend, and that was it. But she was a tomboy, and as it turns out, she became, not became, she's a lesbian. So we knew from the both.
There you
Yeah,
go.
so that was interesting when my sisters told me that. Oh, Elizabeth's a lesbian now. I said she always was. She's just living it out loud now. So yeah. Anyway,
With
uh,
22 siblings total, I mean, there's the odds are you're
yeah,
going to find someone else.
yeah. And that's the other
That's
thing.
so funny.
It's my coming out and my um, sharing my story, which I had the amazing love of my family who helped make sure that the details were correct and that the support, because it's ugly, can be ugly, and they don't like having their laundry aired, but they said this is your story, and if somebody in them doesn't like it, too bad, because this is your story and you have the right to tell it, and it's true and it's important. And what we were like then, we know more educated, more knowledgeable, and we are different from that then. And this is your chance to tell your story. And so I got that from them. But it was early on. You were talking about when I knew. As I said, when I was younger, some things happened with touchy feely sexual things with the older boys, but one of them told my other brother about what had happened, and my older brother, older for me, was 4 years older. The others were high teens. But he came to me and asked me if it was true. Of course, I deny it. No, no. But then my oldest brother cuffed me up and told me, we don't
Right.
do those things. Boys don't do that. And don't you ever disrespect the family or bring shame to the family. And here I'm a 6-year-old kid, 7-year-old, being cuffed up by my brother. And that frightened the hell out of me. So that shut me down. But I always
I
knew.
bet.
My first sexual experience was, yeah, actually, my very first sexual experience was with, unfortunately, the Boy Scout assistant scoutmaster who uh, put me into the situation I found myself um, through his basic his raping of me and grooming me and then putting me out on the streets. That is uh, who gave me my first, I guess, male full interaction. But of course, it wasn't anything to be happy about.
Right.
Yeah, so I hated that aspect, and I still to this day would think my first had to be like that. But those things you work through. You have to work through them, otherwise you'll stay there and it'll do damage. And the thing is, I
Right.
can't give him power over me. And if he's in my head and he's in my memories, and I dwell on that, then he has control over me still. He has power still, and I can't give him that. I can't give him
Right.
power because that's dangerous for me. You know. So, but yeah,
Well
uh,
said. No, I
uh, yeah, and then I always knew I was gay. I knew I was different. I knew I had a different lean. Let's see. I was on the left
right.
side of straight. So, um, yeah, that was it. I mean,
Well, we'll go into more in that. Let's go a little backstory because we've kind of now touched upon finding this guy here. Your mom was having some mental health issues and everything, so you didn't really have a steady parental type figure, and all of a sudden this guy comes into your life. How does that happen? And how do you kind of, what's that relationship like at first before it starts to take this turn?
The relationship with my mom, or with I'll name his name, Charlie.
Well, start with your mom and then how the relationship came about with the Scoutmaster.
Sure. Well, first of all, my mom, she was my everything. I was her pride and joy. I was her baby Rey, and I put that in the book. It was my baby, It was loving. It was just warming. I was cuddled into her arms, and I describe her in Angel Finally Found His Wings. Her look, her size, her demeanor, and that was beautiful. I was like in heaven with that. But then the sickness began to come back. And I say come back because I learned that my mom had gotten sick years before. There was a brief period where she wasn't. But she started to go out of herself a little bit, like dream, daydream, whatever it is called. And I would find
Right.
Ma, and then she'd come back, and I knew something was different. What really became different was she started to have auditory hallucinations and auditory conversations with people who weren't there. You would think they were there, but they weren't. I'd hear that through the doors of the apartment where her room was, Canarsie. And it escalated to a point where she was then going to doctors to see what they could do, design, diagnose what her condition is and what they could do to help. And then my father
Right.
died. Yeah, so that took a different turn.
Yeah, that was at a young age, right? You were like 6 at the time
I,
or
I
something?
was Yes. It began just shy before turning 6. Yes, my father died in my 6th year of August. Yeah, which is 1966.
And so your family, so now your brothers and sisters and you are starting to deal with this. Does anyone really know what to do? Is there anyone kind of taking charge in the family, or what is the family dynamic with your siblings like now?
Yeah, but the older group of us, of the brothers and sisters, were all married, had children of their own, some infants, some adolescents, some teenagers, because of the range of ages between us. So they were out of the house. The ones that were in the house, I had one who was in Vietnam, 67, 68, 69. Another one who went in 70. So they were out of the house. My sister got married, so now it's down to 4 of us in the house, really 3. And then there was a lot of craziness going on in the house. And then my father died, which turned everything upside down. That brought my brother back from Vietnam during a time in his life where he was completely destroyed mentally. He came back to Brooklyn, but he was still in Hanoi. The different places he was there with the images and the damage that was done to him and
Wow.
he did to others. So he brought that home, and that was the destruction of our family. Yeah.
And talk about now, how did you meet this scoutmaster? What was that relationship like at first? Was it more of a mentor? Was it immediately? Can you tell looking back on it, can you tell he was kind of immediately getting ready to be a groomer or something? Or talk about what
Yeah.
that first encounter was like with him?
I first met Charlie when we were coming home from the orphanage, because we ended up going to an orphanage and being there for almost 5 years in total. Um, on our visitations home, when my mother was released from the mental institution, she was home. After her visits at home, she was given permission for us to come back to her, to reclaim us from the state. And the process was we get visitations with her, supervised, then her to come up to the offices to see us so they can observe, then visits, weekend visits home, then holidays, and then summer. They got to the point where they said, okay, she can have them now. She just needs to have these things, an apartment, which my sister gave her apartment, and made sure we had a room and stuff for us to live with her. That did happen, and they let us go home to her. Now, in the documentation that I was able to get because of FOIA, my sister, who was really taking care of her, Margie, Mumi we call her, she stated in the writing that this is not the right thing to do. She is not capable of taking care of him. I know you're saying she can. She can't. I take care of her. I live. I have to give her the pills. I have to do this. I have to do that. So she was against us coming home. She said they're in a safe place, a loving, caring place, which we were, and you're going to give her to. She can't do this. It's going to be bad. And they decided what my mom wanted was her children back, so they gave her back. And that was the point at which, when we came home, Charlie, that assistant Boy Scout master, began to get closer with me, and also to my family, and my mom especially, to manipulate everything by presenting himself as a very respectable person in the community who works with the kids who are here to keep them in school and out of trouble and out of the gangs, which were prevalent and recruiting aggressively. And he said, I work with the PAL League, which is the Police Auxiliary League. I work with the CYO, which is the Catholic Youth Organizations for the basketball, and also I am a Boy Scout leader, assistant Boy Scout leader with the Boy Scouts of America. So he had all this credibility and credentials that were impressive and were safe and caring. So he was easy to sneak in, and he worked his way in. But the way he found out about us, little by little, until we were finally there, was through the other boys that he was having interactions with the coaching, and having them participate in some scouting. And he would ask them questions about who are the new guys, what's their story, because I got to interview some of those guys who knew. Other than that, he just kept working it. I had no idea about grooming. I didn't know what grooming was. I just knew this was a nice man who was a coach. He was a Boy Scout leader. He was interested in me. He was including me. I couldn't pay to go to these places, and he was paying for me to go so I could get away with them and join the others. So that just made me happy and so appreciative of him, and I wanted to please him too. So I would do whatever he wanted to do. These were before the other stuff happened, and he would always ask me about my mom, what's going on, how's she doing. He got to meet her, then he ingratiated himself with her. She spoke Spanish primarily, and so he spoke Spanish since he was also. And that made her feel happy because now she could speak to him in a language he can understand and communicate. So she saw that I was happy and all the nice things he was doing for me, and he worked his way in.
And when did you first kind of feel, I mean, he eventually kind of almost, I guess you could call it emotional blackmail or whatever, that he was going to use your mother's illness against her and everything. When did it turn from being this kind of loving someone you could look up to, at least, relationship, to start to take this darker turn?
It started slowly. If I go back at it, it started with just wrestling when we were on trips, and just horsing around and stuff. And then I could feel a different way of touching that was happening in certain areas. But the first time that we had a sexual was on a Boy Scout trip, and in our tent, and he was sleeping in the tent with me, and that's where the first one happened. It was after, when I decided that I really didn't want to do those things, that he started to drop hints about his knowledge of my mother and my situation, and it depended on her mental health and stability that I would be able to stay with her. And if it was discovered that she was sick again, I would go back. So he was playing those kind of mind games with me, and then he was trying to introduce me to
Right.
something new, which he obviously got me to do. And I said, no, I don't want to do that, you know. And that's when he started to play the head games with me on insinuating it would be a shame for your mom to be discovered that she's not well again and she has to be put into the hospital again and you'll have to go someplace and you'll probably, you know, that kind of way. And he was and he was getting sharp with me so that I was feeling like a bad that I had upset him after all these nice things he was doing for me, you know, and paying for me and even giving
Mm,
money to my mom
right.
to help her out. So he worked it all that way. And he just, in Angel Finally Found His Wings, my book, I talk about it more detailed about how and the actual things that he did in order to get there. But that's what he did. He did it slowly, and then when he saw he had enough on me to affect me with his threats, he began that. And he knew my love, my sense of protection for my mom was enough to have the threat work. And that's when he took me to the next
Gotcha.
level, which was prostitution.
And talk about your mental state. Does it start off as something like, well, I have these feelings that I'm not really talking to anyone about, and I'm meeting these other guys through him? Is it ever kind of an innocent thing at first until it not, or was it always, did you always feel the pressure right away and know that this was something that shouldn't be happening as far as him kind of getting these other guys around?
I knew that what he was doing with me was not right. I mean, I think anybody knows inside. They might not know the words of how to express it. Even like I didn't know I was gay. I just knew I felt different. I knew boys were more you know, my taste than girls. But
Right.
for him, it was I didn't want to disappoint him because he was so nice to me. He'd done so much. You know, he'd made my life fun and I was able to do things because of his generosity. That's how I saw it. And especially when he
Right.
got my mother to let me go to the Boy Scouts and he bought my uniform and he paid the fees and he got me to display my new uniform in front of my mom in the house and she was just ecstatic, you know, and I saw her beaming with this pride and joy and the blessing that her son had somebody to look after her and she can feel safe with this now. And he obviously witnessed that and that power, that relationship. And that was the real hook
Right.
at that point. That was the thing that threat was going to work. He knew, and it did work, and that was the whole reason he could manipulate me and have me do the things that he had me do. Yeah, he controlled me with the threats. The physical came after
Right.
when I started to say, "No, I don't want to do that." I get a slap. Uh, and
Gotcha.
my when we discuss things about how to do that, I don't know what to do. You know, well, I wouldn't do that. No, he said, no, I don't worry about it. I'm going to teach you how. And he began to teach me how um, by raping me, by forcing me to do things, even though we had done things before, but it was a different way now. Now he was going to show me how to make,
Right.
as he would say, my money. You know, and that's how I learned other things and what was going to happen when I was out there.
Right. Well, you have to read the book because we don't want to go too much into detail because the details are there. But I think it was not gratuitous at all. I think it was very well written. But let's talk about now you start to identify that this is not a healthy thing. You need to get out of there. How does this come about where you're able to escape this? Give a little
Ah,
bit of a hint of how that starts to happen.
absolutely. My blessings in this was one of my Johns, I refer to my Johns, um, took an interest in me, um, and wanted to help me, but he didn't know how to help. He knew something wasn't right with me being on the street, the way I looked, the way I carried myself. And he observed me for a
Right.
long while, he said, for many periods, just to see what was going on with me. This boy on the street at these hours, he's not supposed to be. What's going on? Then he made his introduction. In the book, I talk about that didn't go well, even though I thought it was. But then he comes back, and he was afraid that I was a setup, a decoy to hook people on the street. He realized I wasn't. He came back to make his contact again. And it was in our relationship as uh, John and prostitute that he began to reveal how he was feeling and what was concerning him about me. And he relayed to me
Right.
that you can talk to me if you want to. I would like to help you. I know something is not right, but I don't want to push you on anything. But I want you to know that my interest has gone beyond this, and I want to help. If you allow me to, and you share what I can do maybe to help you, uh, I'm telling you I will do that. And and he didn't push too much after that. He'd bring it up, everyone. Yeah, you think about what I said. Sometimes we'd meet, and we didn't do have sexual relationships. We had conversation and lunch and walk and talk, and he'd share. He began to open up about who he was, he really was, and it was, as I said in the book, it was a point at which we always go to the Henry Hudson Hotel. That's where we would go and have our meetings and our encounters when we would. And then he started to drive up into Riverdale one day, and we were talking, and as it was in the book, it was at that point I didn't realize that he said, "Well, I want to tell you who about me. I want to just make this even for both of us. If I tell you about me, I'm vulnerable now to you, and I've made myself vulnerable to you, and you have made yourself vulnerable to me, so you can see we both have something in it." And he started sharing, and then he
Right.
asked me, and I looked at him, and I was hearing him, and I was feeling emotions, and I finally just blurted out, I said, "What do you want from me? What do you want?" You know, and he just looked at me. He held me with my face, and he said, "I want to help. Just let me have the opportunity to help you." And so uh, that's what happened. Then he revealed. I said, "So what are we doing here?" He said, "Well, I wanted to bring you to my home." And so that was the introduction. Now he's opened himself up. Now I know where he lives, all that stuff. So he then, we met again and again, and I began to tell him uh, about the truth of what was going on, who this person was that was controlling me, my pimp, and what my situation was. And I shared with him too that all the stories I was sharing with him about we needed money for this, and we thought we had the money, but somebody broke into this and took that, and now I'm behind that money. And he would always compensate for that. But we knew that because Charlie told me he would, and he did. So it was a whole weaving of
Yeah.
Charlie and I manipulating him, and then it turned around when I opened up to him and told him, and I believed him and trusted that he helped me, and he and I manipulated Charlie, but Charlie didn't know that he knew Charlie and I were trying to manipulate him. So I was a double agent in a sense, but he
Right.
knew both sides. Charlie didn't know both, and that was the way he helped me go.
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, there's so many ways this could have gone. I mean, so many bad ways that possibly out there. But then all of a sudden, the service comes into your life. Talk about that point. How did that opportunity present itself, and what was that like in turning your life around, joining the military?
The service was something I always wanted to do, and I spoke to James about that when I said I really always wanted to be a soldier. It was something I wanted to do. I wanted to serve, protect, and defend, and stand up for those who were uh, weaker and maybe lived in fear. I hate bullies. And he said, no, 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 you've had enough going on in your life. You don't need to be doing that. You need to be mending from what you've just gotten out of. I said, but that's what I want. He said, I understand that. But I said, well, they draft me. What if they draft? He said, if they put the draft back, I'll move you to Canada, and you're not going. You have to take care of this. So that was great. And the thing that changed everything and changed my life again for the worst, and it took me on deep, dark, was his death. He passed away on me. And as silly as it sounds, but I was young. And even though I was older, I was still young because I didn't have the formative years of relationship and understanding and loving somebody like that, which was very confusing for me. But I remember he said, oh, you'll leave me like everybody else. And he said, I'm going to make you a promise. I'm never going to leave you. You can believe that. I will never leave you. I remember him saying that. I was sitting on the couch, and then he did leave. He died on me. And I was not
Wow.
prepared for that. I absolutely believed him. He was never, at least I thought I'd be older. But anyway, when he died on me, I was completely devastated. Everything, my safety net, everything in my life was gone. I mean, everything. And I had to now deal with this without having that person who knew my life on my own. And I didn't know how. I didn't know how to be gay. I knew how to be a hustler, but I didn't know how to be gay. I was
Right.
learning how to have some normalcy in my life with him, but now that's over. I had nowhere to go. I had to leave that place that he had. I ended up going into the streets. He left me some money. I didn't know how to operate with money. I was in pain. I was lost. I was hurting. I turned to drugs and alcohol, and I had friends who were happy to help me, because I was providing. Um, and I just sunk deeper and deeper and deeper, and I gave up hope. I gave up hope, and I finally got some help. I went to ARC, which is Addicts Rehabilitation Center in Manhattan, after putting myself in a rehab facility in Midtown Manhattan. After 2 weeks stay there, I ended up going to ARC there, and this was a hardcore one. I ended up getting help, and they helped me figure out through counseling stuff. They said, "What is it you want to do with your life? What have you always wanted to do?" And that military came to mind, and so I talked about that, and they said, "Okay, well, we can do that, but first we got to make sure you're clean." So I can't have drugs or anything in me. So I cleaned out. I got that. Then I got assigned a buddy, and we went to 125th Street Military Recruitment Center, and I spoke to the guy at the Army, and he asked me, "Sure, what do you want to do?" And I told him what I was interested in doing, and he gave me a test, and I took that, and he said, "Well, you could be anything." He said, "So what do you want to do? What would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, I like this combat engineer stuff." He said, "Are you kidding me? You can do go into be a paralegal. You can be dentistry. With the scores you have." And I said, "No, I want to just do something on the ground, hardcore kind of my hands and rough. I want to be a soldier." So
Yeah.
he said, "Okay." He said, "When do you want to go?" And I said, "Tomorrow, okay?" And he said, "I can't do tomorrow, but let me see what I have." And he said, 30 days. Now, this was a dilemma for me because I was going to be discharged the end of the week from this facility. I had no place to go, and I knew that was not going to be a good thing. I knew if I hit the street, the chances are I could be influenced to maybe taste a little bit more and then get pulled back in from my friends. Not my friends, the people I associate with.
Right.
Say that. And I made one request to him. I asked to speak to the president of the facility, and said, "Is there any way I can stay here until the day I have to meet my recruiter to be inducted?" And he said, "I think I can make that happen. Let me talk to the board people." And he did. They said I could stay, and they would escort me to the facility where I was met with my recruiter, and that's how I ended up getting the best decision I had made in my life at that point.
Wow, that's great.
And I flourished.
So this leads you onto a whole new path. Things start to improve dramatically and everything.
Yes.
Talk about wanting to start to relive this. I mean, you're going on with 200 other guys on Oprah Winfrey. What kind of made you want to relive that moment? You're starting to go. You have this upward trajectory you're doing. You're feeling good about yourself. What made you want to revisit that?
It was after I got out of the military, I joined the airlines. I from another job, I uh, applied for American Airlines to be a flight crew member, flight attendant, and I was accepted. That was something I always wanted to do, travel. I wanted to see the world. And that took me, I graduated from there and I was stationed in San Francisco. I met my spouse and we were married 5 years after we had met. As a matter of fact, we're celebrating our 20th marriage anniversary, and our 25th, September 9th, will be 25 years to the day we met. So you can see my life has dramatically changed. But it was my spouse. We had a store, and it was in there. He met somebody, one of the clients who were in the store, and they were talking about the show because he was speaking to them. I started to tell him I was thinking about doing this, but it was hard. I knew what it was going to take for me to do it, and I wasn't fully aware. At least I'd gotten to the point where I was thinking about doing it. Anyway, he told them about it. He said, "Wait a minute, there is a show that's being done." He worked with the guy John Walsh, who he was associated with, and he told us about this show that Oprah was going to do, and they probably would love to have me come on and talk about it. It's going to be with 200 other men. So he got that information and they reached out to me. Said, sure, I'll do it. He called me while I was in London and he said, hey, this is an opportunity. What do you want to do? This is the first step. I said, okay. And I got on that show, and it was on that show being surrounded by all these other men of all ages. I mean, yeah, all ages. I mean, younger to older. And seeing them talking with each other and seeing them when the show was happening, the conversations were happening, I could see a lot of people who were still suffering, who were still living as victims, and remembering that part as opposed to being part of the victimization and then part of the survivor. I saw so many people still hurting, unable to get past it, to go further, And I came home and I told my spouse, it's time for me to tell my story because I want others who suffered this, who haven't gotten to where I am, because I was sitting in there feeling alive. I was feeling empowered. I was feeling in control of myself. I wasn't afraid of what my life had been like and anybody finding out anymore because I was sharing it now. I was telling it. And it was in that sharing, I found my strength, my power. And I diminished the power of anybody who could try and use something like that against me, especially the thoughts and the memory of Charlie, who was the abuser who violated me and put me in this situation. Right. And I wanted them to have that. And I also wanted them to know that we can have love, that we can have relationships. With all the horrible traumas of the sexual relationships I had to perform and had to be involved with, that I could have true loving relationships. I could be loved genuinely and I can love genuinely and fully, and that I was not a broken soul. I was not broken, I was not damaged goods, and I was worthy of happiness. And I needed to share mine so that they could have it as well. I just wanted them to know this could happen for us. And that's when I came home and we began that process. We started. And it took me almost 13 years to be able to get the book
you gotta
published.
love Oprah and her aha moments from victim to survivor. I love that.
Absolutely,
that's a great story.
And that was the thing that got me. I needed to tell it and say, in spite of that, we can have this too. You got to work. There's work that's involved, but it's that if you can see somebody who's living it that way and having these things, these wonderful relationships, I'm able to live fully and happily in spite of that. That's what I wanted them to know. And sometimes hearing people talk is nice, but as I always say, don't listen to what I say. Watch what I do. Observe how I live and how I act and treat people. And that's who I am. What I say can be said by anybody. And I always had this quote because I
How did it
feared. I'm sorry. I always had this quote that
How did you
because I heard,
feel while you were writing it? Did it feel like a healing journey, or did it feel like reliving the trauma a bit, or was it a
both.
mix of both?
Absolutely a mix of both. I had to stop at times because the trauma was catching up to me. I was safe in my awake state. I was unsafe in my sleep state. And that is when my fighting, my crying, my fear, my running uh, 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 presented itself. Um, the horrors presented itself in my sleep. And that's when my husband, my spouse, Scott, had to take over the part of protection and defending me and bringing me out of it and making
Right,
sure that I was aware that I was in a safe place, that I was okay, and walk me back to where I can now take over and protect. So I was blessed to have somebody
oh,
hold me
very
and to protect me from me and what was
right,
happening when that's the one place I couldn't protect me from and in my sleep. But he, to this day, and he does it still. I mean, is dealing with me. That's one of the things I don't know if it'll ever go away. But I know how to deal with
right.
it. I know I'm safe. There's no danger to me. And I want others to have that. It's amazing. To be,
Exactly. We're
I've
all
witnessed
looking for
it.
something like that. So well
Yeah,
done on Scott. Yeah.
he's, and it's because of him that this book was written. It really was. He kept encouraging me. He supported me financially. He helped me get through with it. And he was so determined to have my story told, to say, see, even though this happened, this doesn't have to happen because it happened, but this can happen, and
Right. Right.
that was the point of it all. And he wouldn't let me give up. He cried through it. I cried through it. We had to stop at times. Sometimes I was exhausted because I was also flying back and forth. And he said, just let me write. I tell you what, because we asked how this goes. He said, sometimes you're just talking to a dictator and just talk. Just tell the story and he would take over. And yeah, I couldn't. That's why it's dedicated to him. And he became part of it because he was living it with me.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the story. We got to start wrapping it up. But what do
Sure.
you hope what have you heard and what do you hope people are taking away from this book now?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, what has happened because of my writing and sharing my story has helped in that I've had people share their story with me that had never in their life spoken about it. They felt in me and saying mine and how honest, brutally honest I was in the book and what I shared, a courage. So far as not only a brother-in-law shared that he had these traumas happen to him, not like mine, but that it was, and he'd never spoken about it. I had a nephew. I've had several situations where they've shared that my book has given them hope, inspiration, and courage, and that they appreciated and they couldn't believe how honest and that I would do this, and they couldn't thank me enough for it. And I said that was the reason I wrote it, so that others could know um, that we're there are more of us than just me, and that we can all have this, and you're not alone. And the only power that anybody has over you is the power you give them, and that was it.
Well said. Well, Ron Hunter, thank you so much for coming on the Left is Straight show and sharing your story. The book is Angel Finally Found His Wings. Let everyone know where they can find your website so they can purchase this book and get in contact if they have any questions or would like to share their stories with you.
You can purchase the book from barnesandnoble.com on site, and then also from Amazon. I think it's available in hardback, paperback, Kindle. It's also now audiobook. And you can find my website as angelfinallyfoundhiswings.com. I'm also on Facebook at Angel Finally Found His Wings. I'm on Instagram. Anyway, one of the things, I got the title from my name, Angel, came from the orphanage, the Angel Guardian Home. I used that, and also the relationship I had with the people who were at the Angel Guardian Home, the nun, and also while I was on the street, there was a kind of nun that I took care of in terms of giving us some monies in her little baskets I had. But Angel was my street name, and that's where it came. And yeah, I hope, and I'll say this: if they want to reach out to me, let me know that you heard my story and you wanted to ask questions or you wanted to talk with me, so I know that that's what that's about, and I can immediately put them priority in talking to them. I am not a counselor, which is very important. That's not my thing, but I can share my story.
Of course.
Let them know I'm a safe place, and that's it, really. Thank you.
Well, I love that. Ron, thank you so much for coming again on the Left is Straight show. Guys, be sure to check out this book, pick it up. It's such a great read and so uplifting at the end. Thanks again for coming on the show today, Ron. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, stay on the line for me. Guys, be sure to tune in every Wednesday and Thursday for another great Left is Straight show interview. We appreciate you all and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to The Left of Straight Show. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast distributor, and please give us a 5-star rating so more listeners can find us. You can follow us on social media, and be sure to check out our website for contests and other news and information. See you next week.